It surely is amazing how far we're able to push the limits of computer animation, isn't it? From creating real-life dinosaurs to resurrecting late actors who are gone too soon, there is no doubt that CGI has gotten better and better over the years. Heck, even Pixar was able to one-up themselves with the Toy Story sequels. But as the old saying goes, the road to success isn't without its potholes. Whether it's to hide a mustache, re-edit deleted scenes that didn't have the technology at the time, or whatever Katz was trying to do, these attempts gave the impression that CGI was overused and practical effects should make a comeback. And while I am a sucker for practical effects, I don't see CGI as the worst thing to happen to cinema. Now, I do agree that it's used in all the wrong places, but when it's done right, it can actually look pretty convincing, especially in parts where you can't tell what's real and what's CGI. But in the world of animation, there's sort of a limit of how realistic you can make the animated characters look. And that seems to be the downfall of one animation studio known as ImageMovers Digital. Created by Robert Zemeckis, yes, that Robert Zemeckis, ImageMovers Digital is an animation-based company that focuses on motion capture techniques used in most video games to make the animation more lifelike and realistic than ever before. While most of their films made a decent amount of money at the box office, there was never that smash hit that left an impact like Pixar did with Toy Story or DreamWorks did with Shrek. If anything, they either range from pretty decent to just okay. But the biggest nail in the coffin didn't come much later until 2011, when they decided to adapt the science fiction children's book, Mars Needs Moms. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are definitely in for a treat today. And from all the bad press that this movie has been getting, it is no wonder that it flopped so hard at the box office. But despite the negative reputation that this movie received, how well does it compare to the book? Is it better by comparison? Did it follow the book pretty well? Or have people misjudged the film too soon without reading the book first? That's what we're gonna find out today. But before we get started, I would like to let you all know that this is all opinion based, so if you end up preferring the movie over the book or the book over the movie, that's all fine and good. More power to you. Just don't be a jerk about it.
I know what I said, but I was wrong.
So with that being said, let's get ready to rumble! In this corner, written in 2007 by Berkeley Breathed, or Berkeley Breathed, or whatever you pronounce that name, I'm not sure, Mars Needs Moms! And in this corner, released in 2011 by ImageMovers Digital, Mars Needs Moms! The first round with the two main characters that make up the bulk of the theme of the book and the movie, the mother and son relationship. Now, this is going to be very difficult to compare both versions of the mother, mainly because Milo takes up more screen time than her. However, if there was one key difference between the two versions, it would have to be the way they present her. At the beginning of the movie, we see that Milo's mom is presented like your average normal day mother. However, this mother seems to be very laid back and isn't as authoritarian as the one in the book. Seriously, the book version of Milo's mother makes him do everything around the house. From tending to the garden, to taking out the trash, to eating his vegetables. You know, the normal things that kids tend to hate. And what atrocities does Milo have to endure in this movie? Eating his vegetables and taking out the trash. Which is one bag, instead of a whole mountain full like in the book. And yet, he acts like the kind of kids that you will probably see on Super Nanny.
Every day with the trash, what is the big deal? I have to do everything around here.
I thought I told you to go to bed.
You told me to go to bed. You didn't say get into bed. Maybe I'm not supposed to eat vegetables.
Milo.
And look, I get it. They're trying to set up Milo to be this imperfect person who learns his lesson at the end. But I'm sorry, this kid is so much of a brat that his character is downright unredeemable at times. Especially when he says mean-spirited comments like this.
Yeah, well, my life would be so much better if I didn't have a mom at all.
And yes, I know that Milo said something similar to the same effect in the book, but here's the thing. The kid's like 5 years old. Kids at that age are gonna act like that sometimes because they're not mature enough to understand what mothers and fathers have to go through to put food on the table. So it would make sense for him to act like this as opposed to the movie version, who looks like he's in his tweens. And considering that Milo in the book had to do a lot of hard work at such a very young age, it's more than justifiable for him to get angry and lash out like that. But the movie version of Milo doesn't do anything around the house. In fact, most of the time you just see his mother with a basket full of laundry or a vacuum cleaner in her hand, which means that she does most of the work around the house while putting up with his shenanigans.
I have to do everything around here.
Yeah, screw you, Milo. Point goes to the book version.
Book wins. Fatality.
But it can't just be about a mother and son trying to find a middle ground and work out their differences. No. Instead, it has to have some conflict thrown in the mix. And for that to happen, we have to have an ensemble cast of characters. So, let's go to round 2, where we talk about the supporting cast. With a title like Mars Needs Moms, it would be safe to assume that the supporting characters would consist of aliens, right? While both of these versions do feature aliens, the movie adds in an additional human character, as well as give 2 alien characters a personality each. We're introduced to Gribble, who, just like Milo, is trapped here on Mars after failing to attempt to save his mother. But it's okay, because he keeps his sanity with the help of his robot friend. This thing! And nothing else! Oh, and there's also some mutant Muppet baby creatures. I'll talk about them later on when we get to the story round, but for now, let's focus on Gribble, because oh boy is this guy unredeemable, if not more so than Milo. When we're first introduced to Gribble, he seems like a very nice guy. A little annoying, yes, but harmless enough not to do anything malicious to Milo. That is until he agrees to help Milo save his mother, only for him to give up his hopes in order to stay on Mars. Apparently, when Gribble was Milo's age, his mother was kidnapped by the aliens in order to program her memory into one of the nanny bots. But little did Gribble know that once you extract someone else's memory, they disappear in the dust like it was the ending of Infinity War. So not wanting Milo to experience the same thing that he went through as a kid, he tricks Milo into getting caught by the aliens so that he can save him in the nick of time and convince him to stay on Mars.
Once he gets up top, he's gonna give himself away. They're gonna chase him halfway around Mars, and I'm gonna save his butt, and he's gonna be so totally grateful. It's gonna be so cool. Give me a break. Okay, so it's a fib, but it's for his own good, man.
Now look, I can understand that Gribble was trying to help Milo not experience the same trauma that he went through as a kid, but here's the problem with this plan, okay? You give up his hopes and lie to his face for the greater good. And I know that he saw the situation as hopeless, but the least he could have done is try to help Milo save his mother. In fact, Milo has a better chance of escaping the aliens since Gribble has experience on this planet, and he could have easily guided him throughout his journey. But nope, Let's just send Milo on this wild goose chase throughout Mars so Gribble can prove a point that these aliens are dangerous and it will be safer to be with him. I don't care who you are or what good intentions you had in mind, this is the most douchiest thing you can ever do to another human being. And even if you did give him a tragic backstory, it's still not gonna redeem his character even more or make me more sympathetic towards him. So yeah, Gribble is trash. Let's move on to the other alien characters. While the aliens in the book version don't have that much of a personality, I will have to say that they're likable in their own little way. Think of them like the Martians from Space Invaders if they were dressed up as Teletubbies. However, the movie version of the aliens are portrayed as more cold and heartless, and very submissive to the evil dictator known as the Supervisor, which is basically her whole character in a nutshell. She's nothing more and nothing less than a villain for the protagonist to go up against, and not a memorable one at that. However, the only likable character in this movie by default has to be Kai. While she does get a little annoying at times with her outdated hippie slang, I don't see her as the worst alien character ever made. However, if I were to say something about her character, it would be underdeveloped. She's just a harmless character, and considering that the other characters are either unlikable or bland, that's saying a whole lot. However, if I had to choose between the book supporting characters and the movie supporting characters, it would have to be the book version. Sure, Kai is the only likable supporting character in the movie, but I'd much rather have a group of likable supporting characters than the ones that we got in the film. Point goes to the book version.
Book wins. Fatality.
But of course, when an animated movie or a picture book get pit up against one another, the biggest thing that everyone's going to talk about is the art design. So, let's go to round 3, where we talk about best art design. First off, let me address the elephant in the room because this is the most talked about issue that this movie has, and you probably want to know what my take on the matter is. So let me just get that right out of the way. Yes, the aliens do look creepy. Yes, they do slip into the uncanny valley sometimes, but I wouldn't go as far as to call them poorly animated. It's just that they made a poor design choice that gives them this unsettling vibe that makes you feel uncomfortable at times. However, I will say this much, the design on the hair particles look pretty detailed, but despite the technical advances this movie has, well, that's where my praises end here. The aliens in the book are somewhat of an upgrade, but that's not saying much. Sure, they look better by comparison, but they're not unique enough to stand out from the crowd. If anything, they're just generic looking aliens. The human characters are okay, I guess. It's not that they look horrible by any means, but for some reason the character design looks a little bit dated. And keep in mind, this came out in 2011 and Polar Express came out in 2004, so you would probably think they would have improved on the technology a little bit more, right? Well, let's just say that the CGI in Polar Express still holds up after all these years, while this movie doesn't. That's pretty bad. Now, you could argue that it might be because of budgetary reasons, but let me put this into perspective. This movie had $15 million less of a budget than Polar Express, and that is a very small margin. So there is no excuse for this looking that bad. As far as the illustration in the book goes, the art design is pretty decent and colorful to look at, but sometimes the watercolor shadings do get a little smudgy at times. However, in comparison to the movie version, it is 1,000 times better, and I will prefer this over whatever we got here. So, point goes to the book version.
Book wins. Fatality.
But it all comes down to one burning question. How well does the movie adapt the story of the source material? Let's go to the final round where we talk about the story. Right from the get-go, we see that the movie follows the book pretty closely within the first and third act of the movie. We see where the aliens come from, which is a very accurate description from the book. We see Milo having some quarrels with his mother, which are somewhat accurate to the book, though very limited by comparison. And even the ending is a perfect recreation of the original source material. However, when it comes to the second act of the movie, that's where the filmmakers take a few liberties from the book that the movie is based on. Aside from the aforementioned side characters, the movie goes a little bit darker by adding in this dystopian universe subplot to make the movie more feature-length. And while I don't mind having a few side plots to turn this little picture book into a third act story structure, it all comes down to whether the themes of the movie are consistent with the source material that you're basing it on. When adapting a book to the big screen, the biggest rule of thumb is to adapt the story to fit a feature-length film, while also keeping up with the same themes that the original book had. While the book story may not be perfect, at least it wasn't trying to be the Hunger Games of children's books. It's just a simple story about a boy learning to appreciate his mother more and not take her for granted. The movie story, on the other hand, is nothing more and nothing less than a Frankenstein monster of the original children's book, with a few elements taken straight from The Giver. I mean, seriously, think about it. The story takes place on a dystopian world filled with no color. Gribble is the only human to share his experience with a younger person. The aliens discard thousands of babies and kill without remorse or questioning, and it takes the two of them to stop the aliens for committing murder on another living being. So yeah, Mars Needs Moms ripped off The Giver. And considering that you're making the movie adaptation of The Giver look better by comparison, it says a lot about your movie. Also, the movie tries to add a little bit of history with these aliens, but it only complicates the story and leaves you with more questions than answers. For example, they explained that the aliens got rid of the male babies because they're useless, but then later on in the movie, we see that the aliens used to take care of their children like normal human beings. Okay, that sounds all fine and good, but in the beginning of the movie, you explained right away that the aliens birthed out of the ground like potatoes. So if there's a male and a female, then how do these things even procreate? Is it like asexually like frogs, or is it normal like human beings? It just doesn't add up. The reason why the book is able to get away with this easily instead of the movie is because they barely give us any information about these aliens. The only explanation that the book gives us about these aliens is that they sprout the ground like potatoes, and that's all there is to it. Nothing more and nothing less. And thus, we the audience don't question that much about it. But here, it just overcomplicates the story and contradicts everything that we know prior about the aliens. So it comes as no surprise that the book version of Mars Needs Moms is the clear winner of this book versus films debate. So that was my books versus films of Mars Needs Moms. And was the movie that bad that warrant all of the criticism it's getting? Of course it did! This movie sucks! Now, with that being said, do I classify this movie as the worst animated film ever made? Well, technically speaking, not really. When you get right down to it, there are only three things at fault: the alien designs, the unlikable characters, and the way that the movie takes a simplistic story and overcomplicates it with its nonsensical world building. However, in the case of Mars Needs Moms, the animation is pretty top notch, and despite the characters being unlikable human pieces of garbage, the actors do a really good job for what they have to work with. So yeah, it's not the worst animated movie ever made, but it's still a pretty bad movie, and I can understand why it bombed so hard at the box office. If you're looking for me to give a good recommendation towards this movie, I will have to say that you're out of this world, if not another planet. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Anyway guys, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.
Howdy, come